Hey up everybody, my name's Joshua Morrison, director of Johnny Moz's Lessons in Confidence. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the politics of envy and how it's a little bit annoying, how if you sort of discuss issues with wealth accumulation and people hoarding so much of the wealth, that ends up translating to, ooh, you're just jealous of them, you just want to be them. So I watched this thing recently, it was just some YouTube video and it was discussing the life, like day in the life of an average billionaire, right? And this guy, he had like 10 mansions all down this big Hollywood Boulevard sort of road, right? All these mansions all down one road, and he had 50 servants, right? And so the servants and the chefs, he had like 6 chefs, and they would all do the cooking in what was called the cooking house, right? And that was one massive mansion, right? That was probably the size of like that entire building that's back there, right? And so the chefs would cook all the food in the cooking house, and then they would bring that to the dining house, and then the family would sit and eat in the dining house. And then they also had a playhouse for all the children to just sit and play. Then they had what was called the main house, which I imagine was where they slept and did like maybe their basic watching the telly and like showering and stuff like that. They also had like a garden house, which in this massive stately sort of garden with like probably like 10 gardeners keeping it up and all that kind of thing. He had like a collection of cars, all classic cars, various types of car, Range Rovers as well for the, if he needs more boot space and that kind of thing. He obviously had various chauffeurs for each, person to take them wherever they need to go, that kind of thing, right? He also had 3 pilots on standby and 2 private jets. And I was looking at all this utter opulence and I was sort of thinking to myself, say if I had, say, $5 billion, right? Would I want this? Would I want all of this stuff? And I thought to myself long and hard, and I tried to think genuinely and honestly, and I try and empathize with their situation because they have so much money, which also means they have so much power, which then translates into responsibility to use that power for some kind of good, at least for the good of the people that you know, right? Even if that counts as nepotism and corruption, all that kind of thing. And I tried to empathize with all of that, and then I sat and thought, would I want all of this? And the honest answer was absolutely fucking not. I sort of sat to myself and I thought, what would I want? If I could have all the wealth, say unlimited money, money's not a problem, what would I have? And I thought, right, it would be nice to have like maybe a 2-bedroom apartment in the middle of London, right? Maybe along the Thames, maybe quite high up so I could have a nice little view over the river, that kind of thing. Maybe a balcony so I could go out and have a fag, right? That would be nice. A nice bed, all that kind of stuff. DuPont bed, the decent sort of brand bed so you get a good night's sleep. And then it would be nice to have like a house in the country. So that's 2 houses. And then, whichever one I'm not using, I might rent out on the Airbnb, something like that. And then I thought, okay, well, what kind of car would I want? Well, my dream car would be like a 1980s Volvo. Those big long ones where shut up, where you keep all the dogs and stuff in them and all that kind of thing. Like you keep loads of dogs in the back. You see people carrying golden retrievers and German shepherds in them and things like that. I thought that would be quite nice. And my girlfriend would like a Chevy sort of like 60s classic car. And I thought, it'd be fun to have both of those. That's it, 2 cars. This is already a decent amount of opulence. This is already more opulence than I would necessarily immediately go for, right? But I thought that's the max, that's the peak of riches for me, right? And then it would be nice to, buy like my friends a house and stuff like that, buy my parents a house, all that sort of crap. That'd be nice, right? And do that kind of thing for other people. And I thought, well, hang on, a lot of people end up getting like, sucked in by the money and the numbers and that kind of thing. And they end up wanting stuff that they never would have wanted if they were poor. Like Nicolas Cage going out and buying loads of dinosaurs. That's why he has to do all these random crap films, because he keeps running out of money, because he keeps spending it on dinosaur skeletons, right? And I thought, would I end up doing that? What kind of thing would I collect? I'd probably collect guitars, synthesizers, and build up some kind of music studio. That would probably suck in a lot of money, right? So that's a few different little layers of opulence. Maybe I'd buy like a red camera, just to use maybe some nice lenses, that kind of thing. And then I tried to think beyond that, and I really couldn't think of much. Like a nice little bit of furniture, not anything super expensive, but as long as it's comfortable and it's nice, that'd be nice. Maybe 60-inch plasma telly, that'd be all right. That kind of thing. I wouldn't want a PS5, I've got a PS3. And I haven't even played all the games on the PS3 yet, there's loads of games left to play. So what am I gonna do with a PS5? Because I've got all these games left to play. I haven't even finished Dark Souls 2, right? I know you can get Dark Souls 2 on the PS5 through like some kind of collector's edition, right? But it's going to look exactly the same anyway, so I don't really see the point, because I don't think the graphics really got that much better. But anyway, I was thinking about all of this, like this is what I would want if I had infinite money. And then I thought about how that level of wealth compares to the amount of wealth that is actually being used and the opulence that is being enjoyed by people that have like billions of dollars or even hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, your super yachts, your mega yachts, your 10 mansions down the Hollywood Boulevard and like all your servants, stuff like that. I wouldn't want servants. I'd maybe get like a house cleaner to come in after each of the guests of the Airbnb, but that's it. I wouldn't want a house cleaner coming in and like rooting through all my possessions, you know, because they do that. Like, come on, don't be stupid. I've spoken to cleaners and they do take a little cheeky look, right? And that's fine. I'd do the same thing if I was a cleaner. Hence, I'm not a cleaner, right? But you know what? I thought about how there is so much inequality in the world, right? And how it's something like 8 people own like 30, 40, 50% of the wealth, something like that. And then there's, you know, billions of people living in poverty. There's people living in huts, like 10 to a room, under an ironclad thing that they built themselves with like plumbing that's barely working and all this sort of stuff, and electricity that goes down all the time. And I thought, well, hang on, how is it fair that some people have this, 10 mansions that they don't need, and you know that whole saying of like money doesn't buy you happiness, and rich people like to say that. So they're saying how money doesn't buy them happiness, but at the same time they wouldn't like give up some of the money to those people that live in poverty who are sad because they live in poverty, because like if I had to sleep 10 to a room under an iron fucking clad roof, I wouldn't be happy either. You know, imagine when it rains, all the noise, it'd be terrible getting to sleep, and you probably can't afford headphones to like put on like, and you can't get internet, so you can't listen to like podcasts and stuff. You'd have to download them, you'd have to go to a library, and the library might not be like for 30 miles because of the lack of infrastructure in this country. Like whatever country it might be, I'm thinking like Bangladesh or like Kenya or something like that, right? And I started thinking, so they have so much wealth, at the same time they say that money doesn't buy them happiness, and yet at the same time they don't want to give up that money for this sort of thing. And if you point this out, then you're just jealous of the fact that they want all this money. And that doesn't seem like it's completely right, you know? And maybe I am just jealous. Maybe I just want, you know, $1 billion and a super yacht. Maybe deep down I want that, but I just don't see it because I can't achieve it in this like state. You know, and there's that whole argument that rich people worked for their money, you know, and some of them, you know, maybe they started off with like a $10 million grant from their father and they managed to build that up into like $1 billion business. You know, that's all right. I'm not someone that would sort of say like the likes of like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and that are like stupid, lazy people, but I don't think that they work 10 million times harder than the rest of us, you know? Sure, maybe they work hard, maybe they're very entrepreneurial, maybe they do all this sort of stuff, and sure, maybe they deserve something back for that, but they don't deserve such an insane level of opulence that people have to live in poverty and endless suffering just to accommodate that. You know, and that just doesn't seem like it's completely right to me. And I tried to think, how could we sort of even the balance whilst ensuring that there is still the level of progression and aspiration for people to think, okay, I should try hard so that I can achieve this thing, because people want more than what they have. The grass is always greener on the other side, right? And so people always want something and they need an incentive to work towards that thing. And that's where the defense of capitalism comes in. It's like, right, so if you work hard for something, you will get it, right? And obviously we all know, living in the real world, that doesn't necessarily translate to reality, because look where I am now, right? I'd say I work fairly hard, right? Not to toot my own trumpet or anything. I'm not like a lazy person necessarily. And I'm sat in front of this. It looks like shit, right? There's so many people that walking past that probably work even harder than I do, doing like 70-hour weeks, working 2 jobs so that they can ensure that their like 2 kids are sorted out. Maybe there's like single mums and single dads that are trying to ensure that their kids get food on the table that day, and they have to endlessly worry about the rent and or whatever, you know, and the bills being paid and this kind of thing. And maybe they're taking out loans from one bank and then using the loan from that bank to pay off another loan from another bank, and they're like, it's this whole intermingled complex economy that's come from the credit trap. And I kind of thought, well, hang on. So there's people out there that don't have to worry about any of this, that are born into this wealth, right? Because so many of these people that have this level of money and resources come from a place of privilege. They come from a place where they were able to, you know, take a risk. They were able to put down £20,000 or whatever onto their first business without really having to worry about it. You know, there's people that can go into the stocks and put like £3,000 into the stocks. Like some people can't afford to put £3,000 in the stocks. Some people can barely afford to put like £20 away per month. Some people are losing money every month and they have to endlessly take on little side hustles and gigs and stuff like that. Like, you ever go outside of McDonald's and see the amount of Uber drivers like that are just sat on their motorbikes, just like pissing about on their phone, just going, okay, bored, and they have a little chat. They're not getting paid for this, right? They're waiting for a job to come through so that they can get like £6-7 on some delivery. And then take into account that they have to pay for the petrol for their motorbike, right? And the time that they're spending, they're not necessarily making very much for the amount of work that they're doing, right? And maybe you could just say that they're stupid and like, you know, this entrepreneur is smart because he cracked the code. But not everyone can crack the code. And I don't mean that in like a, you know, emotive sort of way, like not everyone is intelligent enough to do it. I don't think the logistics would work. Say if everybody was an entrepreneur, who'd be the consumer for all these various products that are being bought out? Say if everyone was a billionaire, how would that even function? Because money would then just become devalued. We can't all be super rich. It's physically impossible because there aren't enough resources on planet Earth to accommodate that, right? And so what you kind of need to do is to try and even out the balance, because, you know, if 8 people own 40% of the wealth, is the idea that we want everyone in the world to be like those 8 men? Is that going to be realistic? Is that possible? Absolutely fucking not. But is it possible? Like I did a calculation a few months ago, and forgive me if I've forgotten the exacts of it, but I took like the top like 100 richest people, and I then divided the amount of wealth that they all had, their net worth, and I divided that by 8 billion, right? And it worked out to something like you could do a single payment of like £30,000 to every single person on planet Earth. That's children, that's old people, that's people living in Lagos, that's people living in Nigeria, those are the same thing. People living in America, Australia, China, every single place on planet Earth. Every single person could get £30,000 just from the top 100 men, right? And I thought, that's not right. Because then if you extrapolate that further to maybe the top like 1% in general, you could then pretty much give everyone like £300,000, okay? And that's enough for every single person to be able to buy a house, buy a property, get on the property ladder, or to invest in their own business and to do something like that. They did this experiment where they gave people from all across the world the equivalent of £100,000 in their region, right? And this is all over the world, like Caribbean, Africa, America, Australia, like everywhere around, right? And what they noticed was, yeah, some people ended up squandering the money, right? Some people, quite a lot of them, a large percentage, used that towards getting a mortgage or starting a business or doing something to further their development. They essentially invested that money even into liquidity or assets or whatever it might be, or a business or anything like that. Or maybe they just gave it to their grandchildren, you know? So I feel like that sort of says, one, that people on the ground level of the the impoverished working class, I suppose, are generally good people, because if you did that for the top like 1%, you gave them the equivalent amount for them, I think most of them would keep it for themselves. Isn't there that stat that something like 90% of CEOs are psychopaths? Something like that? I can't remember the exact statistic, but maybe it's like, you know, bad for me to even say that. But if you look it up, there's something like that. Maybe it's 70%, I don't know. But all of this stuff comes together, and it comes back down to the politics of envy and how I'm just jealous of the people at the top because they have something that I don't, right? But the thing is, they have way, 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 way more than I could ever possibly want. I feel like my little thing of an apartment in central London, a house in the country, 2 cars, like, yeah, that's a little bit materialistic, and I'm going max with my materialism here. Really, I'd be happy with just one little like house just for like me and my girlfriend to live in and just like be comfortable, you know, and not have to worry about the next rent payment. That's all I'd want. That's it, right? I wouldn't want any of these sort of things. And if I got any money on top of that, it would go straight back into investing in this channel or investing in business, that kind of thing. I wouldn't really hoard it. I'm not a materialistic person. I don't. Oh, shut the fuck up. I don't want for much. That was a voice crack and a half, but I really don't want for much. I mean, maybe it's virtue signaling for me to say that I don't want a super yacht and I don't want to have mad cocaine parties with a load of fucking degenerate fucking like Hollywood billionaires. I just don't want that. That doesn't appeal to me in the slightest. I'd rather get my real mates around for a barbecue, or like, you know, make them a dinner, or you know, just go down to the pub and have a few drinks, you know. That's all I'd really want for. I don't see the appeal of this extreme level of opulence. But maybe it, just because I don't understand it means that they shouldn't have it, you know. That's also an argument. But I feel like when you consider the fact that there's so many people that are living in such abject poverty, there are so many miserable people that are having to work so hard to get so little, and then you compare that to people that have so much and yet they do so little for it, and you consider the inequality that comes from that, and how it could easily be remedied if these people just let go of some of their materialism and some of their greed, how easily they could fix so many of the problems in the world, and yet they won't. And yet it's me being jealous that is the problem. Me wanting for something is the problem. And it's hard to sort of say that I'm not a little bit jealous. I'm not a little bit, you know, envious of the fact that they have all this stuff and they don't have to worry. You know, they don't have to worry about the next rent payment or whatever. Yeah, sure, I'm a little bit jealous of that because I do. And that's, I guess, all right, because, you know, there's only so many people in the world that can be rich according to the top 1%. And if you consider that you can easily divvy out that wealth that they all own towards everyone on planet Earth, and how everyone could end up living so much happier, the level of happiness across the world would vastly increase, right? If some of these people just gave up stuff that they don't even want, because apparently money doesn't buy you happiness. So if money doesn't buy you happiness, let go of some of it. And let someone who lives in abject poverty just stop living in abject poverty, and you know, make their life a little bit and make their families' lives a bit easier. That's all I'm saying. Maybe it's communist to say that. I don't know. But anyway, that's my little rant over. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you don't think that I'm a lefty woke socialist for this, but yeah, take care everybody. Bye bye. That's a terrible closer. Oh well.